Hello everyone, welcome back. It has been a long time, hasn't it? And I appreciate your patience very much with this. And yes, this is the final chapter of the Mitten journey. And hasn't it been a journey? Obviously I have given some sneaky peeks on Instagram. My link to that is down below, just in case you don't already follow me on there. I have only made one mitten. I did go into it in a previous video about how the effort, the time, all of that, you know, it's been a lot, it's been a journey, but I feel satisfied with just the one mitten. I feel like I don't need to do another one. It's not going to be used or anything. It was purely a project for myself to see what I could come up with, see if I could do some sort of 17th century thing, and I'd never made a mitten before, so now I have. Woohoo. I'm going to quickly touch on the embroidery. Everybody's saying that they like watching the embroidery, so I'll just include a bit, and then we'll move on to the construction. And of course it wouldn't be me without a trim fiasco, so you will see that as well, and also the complete mitten at the end. Without further ado, let's look at the remainder of the embroidery that needed doing. Here we go, all the spangles are on and the embroidery is finished. So I'm really happy with it actually. You can see where I've had bad days, like just here. This leaf here compared to the rest of them isn't quite up to scratch, but never mind. Embroidery tells a story. So there we have it. I'm so happy with that eye. How 3D it is. Look at that. Here we go, I have all my embroidery pieces cut out and I've just placed them on top of the lining, because the way we're going to construct these mittens is each piece is going to be independent from the other and then we're going to join them all up. So actually I'm going to start with the thumb piece, get that out of the way, and then we can attach that to the main hand section, so then it's definitely out the way, and then so on and so on. So let's get started. I've got all my equipment and materials here, so for any basting I'm just going to use my tacking thread just because I can see it and then take it away. And then for main construction I'm going to use 100% linen, just natural thread. I've got my beeswax and then I've got my two different thicknesses of silver to decide which I'm going to fill the seams with. So I'm going to start with the thumb. I've got my top fabric, which is here, my linen interlining like what I have with the embroidered pieces, and then there's usually from what I've read, an extra top upper thumb interlining with linen again. I'm guessing this is for wear and tear of the thumb, because it's the one bit you constantly have your thumb in. In the hand section there's actually a slit for your fingers to go through if you don't want your fingers actually inside the mitten at all times. So I imagine that's so that your thumb doesn't wear that bit away. I'm going to baste this all together so it's one complete item. So when you next see it, it'll look something like that, but just basted together. I'm going to use my tacking thread, just the orange, so that if I need to remove it I can before it's all properly attached with the linen thread. So I'm going to do that really cringy thing of 3, 2, 1. Here we go, all basted together. So this is actually the lining side, and then the top side you can see all the different stitches because I've basted each layer separately. And I know my seam allowance is really scruffy, that's just who I am. I can't change now. And I don't actually really need seam allowance on any of the pieces. I've just left it on for a bit of a safety blanket, just in case I need to alter anything or whatever as I go, because of course with it all being whipped together and then sort of felled with the silver, you don't really need any seam allowance, but I've just left it on just in case. I'd rather leave it too big than too small. I'm actually now going to sew this thumb seam so it looks a bit more thumbish, so it will end up looking a bit like that. Let's see if my thumb, yeah. So it'll end up looking a bit like that, so I am actually going to trim the seam allowance right now. Here is the thumb all whip stitched together, and actually from the inside, because I whip stitched it from the top, it is completely smooth. You know, obviously there's no stitching or anything that you can feel because it's all sort of on the top. Now it doesn't look very neat at the moment, but I'm pretty sure once the silver goes on the top, then it will look a Bobby Dazzler. So I'm just going to baste the lining, Elfa lining, to the hand section, and then work out where the hole for the thumb needs to go and the slit for the fingers, and then we'll attach the thumb. I imagine it will go something like that. I've reached an extremely scary part right now. So I have basted the layers together, so the lining is now on the top fabric and the interlining, everything's together. I've left that a little bit longer, but I've trimmed the rest of the seam allowance. The reason I've left this longer is for when the gauntlet section is attached, I can attach the two linings together, because of course the gauntlets will be one complete piece as well. So I want to leave that a bit longer, so I've got a bit more wiggle room so I can get that last seam nice and neat. Anyway, now is the time to cut the thumb hole. And I just didn't do it. I sort of wish I had a rotary cutter, but I of course don't, and I'm going to have to use my scissors and getting best I can. And of course I won't actually know whether the thumb really fits until I've cut the hole and it's being sewn on. I know I have to ease this section together, but I'm a little nervous obviously for cutting this because it's a big deal. Here we go. The scary part is now complete, the cutting of this hole. It wasn't as bad as I expected. I've left it a little tiny weeny bit over just for the purposes of fraying. We all know what velvet is like, hence the velvet dust that is currently all over my life right now. So now I'm going to place the thumb piece over the hole and sew it on, rather than working from underneath, which is what I was originally going to do. I'm actually going to work from the top in the hope that the hand section will fold itself over, a bit like the inside of the thumb. You know, I can't feel any roughness, it's all smooth as if I've finished it, the lining, before putting it in. So actually I'm going to hope that this sort of curves upwards to create the same effect, so that you don't get the lump there, and then I can just cover it with the silver. That was more difficult than I anticipated. I've managed it though. You can just see the easing of the bottom edge there. Ah, yeah, fab. You can see it's coming together. I'm quite impressed with that actually. Now it's time to attach some silver trim to the seams that are exposed. So it's just the seams that we've just sewn, and that is it. And then once that's complete, we can chop this section for the fingers and then fell that with the same silver trim. Now, as an accidental result of you know, trial and error, in I think my first video I explained how I have two different sizes of trim, which you know, one is quite a bit thicker than the other one. However, because of my stitching, I don't know whether it's because it's me and I'm a bit messy, or it just so happens to be that way, that the thicker trim would actually cover the seams nicely as if they weren't there at all, whereas the thinner one just doesn't seem to cover the bulk. Whereas actually thinking about it, when I've seen other, you know, gloves, garments, whatever, the trim is actually a bit more chunky. You know, this is another version of, look at how much money I have, I've got a thick trim, so we're going to stick with the thick trim, so why not? A lot of trims were sewn on with silk thread. This probably would have been sewn on with white, but I'm actually going to use the silver thread. It's a Madeira Metallics Heavy Metals, I think, and my dog has chewed it up, so I can't even tell you what colour code it is, but never mind, it's the silver one. I've just trimmed the edge of that trim. Now I'm going to start sewing it on. I'm not actually going to pin it on to start with. I'm just going to place it and then hope that it guides me into the right way. I don't want to force it anywhere and end up damaging the trim. And actually I'm tempted to sew one side down first and then go around and do the other side. Here we go, the trim is on our first section and our first seams. I don't think that looks terrible actually. I was worried about it being too thick for, you know, looking elegant and, you know, dainty, but actually I don't think it looks too bad next to the embroidery. It's the same sort of thickness as my leaves there, so it doesn't actually look out of proportion. If I just pop my hand in it, let's pretend that's all sewn. Let's zoom out a bit. You know, I think that looks really cute. Woo. Okay, we've reached another scary part. I'm going to cut the finger slot. I mean, it's not that scary, it's not as scary as that because I simply add trim to finish the seam. Wow, all those layers. That was a nice sound. Okay, so same again, let's add trim. Now is the time for attaching the gauntlet to the handpiece. So I've already basted the lining to the top, and as you can see I have gone round where I'm going to make the cuts for the split tabs, and also I need to trim my seam allowance, and I'm just going to do the same as before, just whipping both together, easy peasy. I don't think actually this time I'm going to include the lining because I want to make sure that it's properly, you know, flat in the end. I don't know why actually I'm doing that, but in my head it makes sense, so that's what I'm going to do. I hope I've removed all the pins because it's so shiny. I can't really tell. Wow, look at that. Okay, anyway, stop messing around. Let's get on with it. I just have to say, what I'm finding really interesting is that when I am sewing with the linen covered in beeswax, it's actually pulling the fibres of the pile of the velvet, which is obviously not, you know, groundbreaking, it's not unusual, but I just thought I'd show that because I thought that was looking pretty cool. That's the central trim on now. I'm so impressed with this trim. I'm so glad it matches really well with this jap that I've used with the gold work. I'm feeling really happy with it all actually, and I'm glad I went with the thicker one because I think the smaller one, especially in that central seam, I think it would have been lost with all this golden shiny shine. So it's all worked out well in the end, it seems. Whilst the mitten is still flat, I've decided to cut the tabs and sew on the trim around this bottom edge, because obviously it's going to be a lot easier to manipulate around all this while it's still flat. Trim is now sewn on and I'm really happy with it, apart from the fact I have made a massive mistake. Obviously these two edges with the snails would be like, when I join the side seam, they would be left to create another tab each, and I've not trimmed up the side. So I'm gonna attach the two sides together, I'm gonna do the side seam, and then I'm gonna do the side trim, and then I can make it, you know, like the rest of them. So I'm sure it'll all work out in the end. But why would I only realise this now after attaching this? And I'm not kidding, it was fiddly. It was really fiddly. But that's because of how stiff this trim is, which I sort of expected. And of course, I've also attached a little label, because why not? I'm really proud of this. So this is the other side just before it is never seen again. I'll just trim that little trim. That was great, isn't it? Look how lovely that is. Just look, it's lovely, isn't it? That colour combo. Woohoo! mitten. Whoop, whoop. That embroidery does look like a smiley face though, I must admit, but wow. Gooey. How cute is this? I never big myself up, ever, but I totes am right now. It's amazing. Okay, so I just need to add trim, obviously, along this edge, and then to close up those tabs there. And then, my friends, it is done. Woohoo! Here we have it, the mittens are done. This is where I wish I had a lazy Susan so I could just plonk it on that and let it spin. But I am so proud of this project. Obviously I've only done half because I've only done one mitten, but I feel that that is enough to be done, you know. I've achieved what I wanted to. I wanted to see if I could make one and embroider it, and I have. So I'm super proud of this. There are obviously a few errors, like with my silver edge on this join, but actually I don't think you can really tell. Obviously I would love to have done more embroidery, but I just couldn't physically do any more. You know, when you end up staring at something for so long and it's just constantly out in your room and you can just see it all the time, that's what it was like. But I am so happy. I mean, look at this eye. And here is the final mitten. I'm actually going to put it on. It sort of fits me perfectly almost, in the sense that my wrist is here at this line and my fingers just slot through the slit there. I'm really happy with it. The only thing I sort of wish I had changed was this embroidery here, because it sort of looks like a smiley face. But apart from that, and of the obvious, you know, mistake that was made but has been fixed, I am really pleased with this. Thank you so much for watching this video and the whole series about the mittens. I do plan on more projects. I'm going to do it slightly differently though, because the breaks in between doing the mittens was a bit much, wasn't it? Please comment down below which motif is your favourite, or which bit is your favourite of the mitten. I personally actually really like the lining and trim colour combo. I am really, you know, isn't that just amazing, those two colours? I know, you know, the embroidery took forever, but I just love this colour combo. And I will see you in my next project video, which hopefully won't be that far into the future. Goodbye! Ooh.